me? Because I have no sound on my end, unfortunately.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Hi,
Welcome to session 4. If you are enjoying the free learning today, you can pay the joy forward by going to the Ed Collab site and finding out how you can donate to No Kid Hungry, our adopted charity. I'm so excited today to welcome JoEllen McCarthy and an amazing panel of authors to talk about picturing possibilities using books as co-teachers K-12. JoEllen McCarthy has been an educator for over 20 years and is a self-proclaimed literacy geek. Joining her is Kathryn Otoshi, a multi-award-winning author and illustrator, best known for her character-building book series 0, 1, and 2. Arree Chung is the author and illustrator of Ninja and the illustrator of The Danger Gang. And Todd Parr is the author and illustrator of more than 40 books for children, including the New York Times bestselling The I Love You book, The Earth book, and The Thankful book. If you're joining us today on Twitter, you can share your learning using the hashtag #TheEdCollabGathering, all one word, with a space and the number 10. And now I'm excited to introduce JoEllen McCarthy.
Hi, everyone. So I am wearing very proudly my Nerd Camp, New Jersey shirt because I am broadcasting live from Nerd Camp, New Jersey in Chatham High School. And so I apologize in advance if we have some technical difficulties because it's sure to happen. I'm super excited because today, not only here at Collab, but and at Nerd Camp is a celebration of books and authors. And I'm really thrilled to have these mentor authors and illustrators with us. There's something very unique about the work that Todd Parr, Arree, Chung, and Todd and Kathryn Otoshi do, and that is that they're able to invite us into stories through pictures and through words that really can help with conversations that we need to have in our classrooms. So I always say that picture books are my co-teachers, and whether I have the friends like Kathryn or Todd or Arree to call into the class at the moment, I have those books and those books on my shelves to be the co-teachers. So today, when we're talking about using their books and books like theirs, we want to really think about how it's an important opportunity to invite conversations through our read alouds. And it's just amazing to know the things that they have done in their books. And I know you don't want to hear from me. You definitely want to hear from them. And so without further ado, maybe Kathryn and Todd, while we're waiting for and Arree, while we're waiting for Todd to get on, you might want to just jump in and say hi and tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Kathryn.
Okay, I'll go first. I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity to be working with you guys. It's very exciting. And I've been a big fan of what Arree's been working on, especially with mixed and how things overlap. But my name is Kathryn Otoshi, and the books that I'm going to probably talk a little bit about is one, Beautiful Hands and Draw the Line. But one of the things that I love about children's picture books is that it really offers an opportunity in a very engaging way to open up kids' minds. I do see books as windows or doors that you literally go into, and you get this opportunity to, through the comfort of your own, sitting on your armchair or sofa or bed, you get this wonderful opportunity in this very safe place to be able to experience what the characters in the stories are experiencing, and then also see the choices that they're making. So that's one of the things that I love about children's picture books is through narrative and story. It's a very simple way to engage kids.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arree Chung, and similar to Kathryn, I just love picture books. I love the ability to tell a story and also just address complicated, deeper issues in a simple way. And I think that's the magic of storytelling and art, is that you can reach people universally and talk about things in visual metaphor. So we'll be talking a lot about that today. And I'm a huge fan of Kathryn and Todd's work. Kathryn's work is always so well thought through, and Todd's work is so heartfelt and relatable. So I'm pleased just to be here, part of the group.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I apologize that Todd hasn't been able to join us yet. You can see behind me I have some of all of these amazing books. And I just think it's really interesting that today is happening simultaneously with Nerd Camp, because Kat Ye, who's one of the authors of some middle grade books and picture books, was here. And she talked about how books are hope on a shelf. And I just absolutely love that. And I think it's so true when I think of the books that are out there in the world today, thanks to authors like Todd and Kathryn and Arree. And so one of the slides that I know I had prepared, and Jessica's putting up for us. Oh, I see Todd coming in. Yay, Todd coming in. It's the fact that, big ideas come in small packages. And when you are familiar with the work that these guys do, it's amazing to see that we can have powerful messages about our world, ourselves, and I think when we use books as the invitations to have those conversations about what we can learn about ourselves and others in the world, amazing things happen. So I'm just hopeful and excited to hear from Todd and everyone today. So I know we have buzzing on Todd's line, and I apologize. I'm not sure why that's happening right now. Let's see. Maybe if Todd wants to try to hang up and then come back, that might work for us, and we'll see. And in the interim, I know that behind me we have all of the books, but you're going to get a sneak peek today at one of Arree's books that's not yet published. That's called Mixed. And so maybe while we're waiting, oh, I think we have Todd. I'm sorry, I apologize. Hi, Todd, welcome. Can you hear us okay? Not sure. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so I'm not sure about, hi, Todd. So Jessica, I'm going to send you a separate text message, and maybe Arree, if you want to talk a little bit, I know I had a slide in there on Mixed, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that book, because in talking about how books, big ideas come in small packages, your newest title is something that deals with a really powerful and important must-have message for all. So you want to take that away? Arree, sorry. A little stressed today, I apologize.
All good. Okay, so Todd's back here. Well, I'm going to talk about Mix, and okay, I'm going to talk about Mix, and actually, I think maybe it might be simpler just to show some images. So I'm going to pull up a few images from Mix, so that way we can talk about them together. So Mix is an idea I had several years ago, and it uses simple color theory to talk about diversity. I'm going to just share my screen. So it uses simple color theory to talk about diversity, and in here on the end pages I use red, yellow, and blue for the simple beginning of blue color. And then introduce the characters, red, yellows, and blues. We establish the world, and everyone gets along until one day they're all going to work. Until one day, Red says, "Reds are the best." And really, this is the simplest way that I can describe why there's so much, racism is just some people think they're better than other people, right? And so this was the simplest metaphor that I could use to talk about it. And when I was developing the story, I also thought deeply about what makes families and what brings people together. And in the end, it's usually love, right? And so we have such diverse families that are being grown, and interracial marriages are happening more and more. So in the story, I mirrored that with yellow and blue falling in love, and they end up getting married. Not everyone liked it. Not all the clothes were happy about it, but they end up getting married, and they created a new color, which was green. And so this new event made everyone see new possibilities. We all fell in love with green, and then other colors started mixing and mixing and mixing. And by the end of the book, there is a whole new colorful world that didn't exist before. And the end pages end with a whole mix of new colors. So that in a nutshell is my book Mix. And what I love about storytelling is the ability to tell more complicated, let me stop my screen share, is to tell more complicated issues in a simple way that's not preachy or heavy-handed. And that's also the challenge as a storyteller.
I think that's a great segue to Kathryn, and I apologize. Our tech is really having difficulty on every end. I think we're getting Todd's worked out in just a moment. But Kathryn, I know Arree just said, about taking like a very complex subject and using a simple metaphor, and I think you do that as well with 0 and 1 and that whole series. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that while we're trying to iron out the kinks.
Sure, that sounds good. I'm not sure if the visuals can match. Right now I'm seeing big ideas can come in small packages. So maybe it's my screen, but I'll just go ahead and move forward. Here we go. So I think that's a great idea what Arree was doing. He showed actual pictures from his story. So I think I'll just kind of do the same where blue is a quiet color, and basically what happens is all the colors are introduced with their own personalities. But the real big issue is between red and blue. And red's fiery and bold, blue is quiet, and red is always saying red is hot, blue is not, making blue feel bad about himself. And what happens is when none of the colors speak up, red just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he gets so big he starts picking on everyone, of course, until a new character called One comes along and he shakes things up. And he shows that the colors can not just stay colors, but they can also become numbers too and count together. But it's a real issue with, dealing with bullying, prejudices that, is part of human behavior, unfortunately. And how do we go about working together? And so my quest with One is really boiling things down to its core essence, but also building in layers. So real young kids could, get the ask questions about, why red is being mean to blue, but also older kids can see the parallels of what happens, with prejudice and looking at each other's differences and seeing how we can celebrate those differences instead. So. And I don't know if we're moving forward with some of the PowerPoint, but draw the line has to do with some of the similar things with kind of going back to what Arree was saying, really showing the metaphor. The line came about from thinking about a connection that we have with each other. Is it a positive connection? Is it not? So I actually know Arree from before, and I always see him as just a real positive force. So I could show in the first slide, I see it as a kind of a line, kind of we take each other up, or we help each other out. But sometimes you might have a relationship where someone's not there for you, or it feels kind of spotty, and I kind of started seeing that as a dotted line. And of course, there's moody people, there's different personalities, and what does that look like? But it became a very simple way to be able to talk about the connection that we have with one another through picture books and really simplifying shapes. At least it was for me. So, and I know Todd, he does that too as well. So I think we all have that. We talked about it before, connecting the dots together.
Yeah, if you could help me, I missed the beginning, sorry with the tech. Can you just kind of give me an idea of where you want me to lead into this? What were you talking about? I picked up Arree's, the last half of that.
Oh, so Todd, we're just, since we introduced ourselves a little earlier, maybe you can introduce yourself just for a few minutes for anybody who doesn't know your work, if if that's possible. And then I was just sharing a little bit about mix, how I use the metaphor of color mixing to talk about diversity. And Kathryn was also talking about how she used metaphor for draw the line and beautiful hands. And so maybe you can add on that for your stories.
Yeah, well, thank you, and nice to see you again. We met last year, I think it was. So it's nice to see you. And hi, Kathryn. Hi, JoEllen. Sorry for the problems in the beginning. I'm Todd Parr. Very simple name, Todd Parr, first name and a last name, but it's one of those names that everyone just likes to combine. So it's Todd Parr. Hey, Todd Parr. Or I saw a school I went to in Chicago had a giant bulletin board named Todd Party. So hashtag Todd Party, I like that. And anyway, I've written over 45 books for kids. I'm working on close up to 50 now. And yeah, my color is like the thing and the work of a 6-year-old. You know, and that's what I do. And again, like in, you know, as far as diversity and colors, you know, it's always been red, yellow, blue, and green for my primary. Then, yeah, I added pink and orange. But a lot of times people say, well, why don't you use regular skin colors? And I think when you write a book, like, it's okay to be different. This one, I think it's so limiting. So the best way to show that there's so many unique differences in kids and people that for me it was just a natural that they're going to be purple people or orange people or whatever. And so color, humor, I rely a lot on humor and unpredictability in my books. I think It's Okay to Be Different is still 18 years ago, I think, and it's still among my best-selling book. But you know, one of the things is like kids' picture books, and when I talk about, sometimes people say, Todd, what age group do you write for? I always say, you know, 4 to 8 and adult, because I think there are adults, one, that need to be reminded, and 2, that are struggling. And I think something with just simple pictures and a few words can be more powerful than reading a lot. The Goodbye book, this is probably one of, if not the book that I'm most proud of. It's Okay to Be Different, of course, helped explain, if you didn't know what I was doing, what that book explained what I was trying to do in all my books. But this one, right after this one came out, I knew I needed to write a book about saying goodbye for very young, and it was challenging. In fact, 7 years I thought about it without working on it, and I finally figured it out. But right after this book came out, I got an email from someone who said that a friend of hers had given her this book, and after not being able to sleep for 2 weeks because her husband had just died of 55 years, she was actually able to sleep after reading my comforting words, and extended her condolences to me because someone could not have written this book if they had not experienced loss themselves. And I thought that was so powerful to get that randomly, that here's this probably in her 70s, and she's found comforting words, and as simple as the Goodbye book. So that in itself is a reward. But so yeah, I got a lot of books, but there's, you know, just the underwear book, of course, for humor, because I write about simple messages, you know, that are sometimes hard to understand for very young. And I think if you have underwear, a book, you're always going to be able to get through the delivery of all your books. And then color, it's just, that's my thing, is color and the black bold lines. So that's the gist.
Awesome.
I love that. I love that. I was listening, and I think we figured out our tech difficulty, so I apologize. I'm listening to you, and I'm actually getting the chills when you said that someone, you know, reached out to you knowing that you may have had a loss, and that's how you wrote that book, right? I think that's one of the reasons that makes picture books so powerful, because whether you're the person that's experiencing that loss or not, you're still able to walk in those shoes, right? So the gift that you give readers by creating books that tell stories, that then they can put themselves in the shoes of those characters and those situations, I think are so powerful. One of the things that's very interesting is I think about Louise Rosenblatt's work, where she talks about the transaction theory of reading and how the reader writes the story. So even though you said something so amazing and incredible about, picture books, they're sometimes labeled, or often too often labeled, 4 to 8. And that's just such a ridiculous thing, because picture books are ageless. And so we should be using picture books in every classroom in all grade levels, so that kids can be able to read and enjoy the story and learn about themselves, see themselves, and also learn about the lives of others. So I thank you all for all the work that you're doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know that when I say that to authors about how the reader writes the story, they go, wait, what do you mean the reader writes the story? I wrote this book and this is what I was thinking, or, this is the reason that I did that. So how about if, Arree, would you like to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so whenever you have a story, it's completed by the reader, because everyone who reads it experiences it in their own way, right? And so a part of the trick in writing stories is to have the message that you want, but also to leave it open enough for someone else to receive it and to complete the story. In mixed, I worked really hard to make it as open as possible, so there aren't genders for the most part, and so mixed can be for interracial marriages or LGBT families, or just even different cultures in terms of like just beliefs, right? Maybe religion. So I think the readers can bring what their own experiences to it. And it's also part of design where if you make things more abstract, such as simple colors that, Todd does a great job of, and so does Kathryn, then people can see themselves in the stories.
Well said, Arree. I love what you just said. I wanted to add to what Todd was saying with the Goodbye book. I had a very similar experience in that sort of all of us, I think, have life experiences that inform what our stories sometimes are. And with Beautiful Hands, for example, I was working on the book 2, and my friend Brett told me he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And Brett is a very loved, was a very loved person. He was always doing kind things for people throughout his life. So we had hundreds of people who were very upset to hear the news. And I had remembered at a barbecue, he had said he always wanted to do a children's book. And it was just one line. It wasn't really even more than that. And I remembered thinking, what can I do in this situation? Because I'm not a doctor. And then I was just like, oh my God, a children's book. He's always wanted to do that. So I went back, and that's what Beautiful Hands is about. I found out every day Brett would hold his kids' hands in his and say, what will your beautiful hands do today? And it became a whole book about kindness, but also taking action. And so the entire book actually has, we wanted to include his family. His entire family put their handprints in this book, and we ended up with over 100 people's handprints that ends up in this rainbow. And it became this commitment. Brett had said to me, he said, I can't wait to see this in every bookstore across America. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I promised to do one book for his kids, Noah and Sophie. How am I going to do this? Because there wasn't funds for it. So we ended up throwing a party, and people could donate what they want. But for $100, which is a lot, but they would get a book, a poster, but their handprint in the rainbow forever. And it became, I don't know if you could show it on the slides, but under my name, there's a spirit bird. And there it is. What we ended up doing is now when I go to school visits, I have kids make promises to do something kind for somebody every day. And we make artwork out of it. And it becomes this really exciting thing. But I just love that Todd and Arree and all of us are sort of working together, and going back to what your original thing was, and I'll stop talking, is the reader does complete us. It's almost like we're asking a question out there, and the reader responds, and it's like they're part of the answer. In fact, they're almost the greater part of what we do, because they take our books and the messages and bring them into their own lives. So it's exciting, I think, to be a children's picture book author.
I love that. See, everybody who knows me knows how emotional I am. So I'm sitting here and I'm like taking it all in and I'm ready to cry because it just makes me so happy. And I'm such a geek and I'm a nerd and I'm emotional, but just hearing and knowing the work that you do, how many ripple effects it has in the classrooms for kids of all ages. And I just love days like this with Ed Collab, because not everybody has the opportunity to bring you in for visits, but they can bring you in so many ways. Having the books available, having you Skype perhaps, or going to your website and getting some of the behind the scenes stories. I think those are the things that really, really are so amazing. And there's a slide that I put together when I was thinking about this work, and how when we read to kids, we're creating a bond through read alouds, and we're really building and facilitating community, but we're also impacting, what they know and understand in their heads, what they feel in their hearts, and then hopefully, ultimately, that's the whole point, what they do with their hands. So it's that knowing, feeling, doing that is so powerful in using books like the books that you create. And you have that opportunity through the actions that you inspire. And sometimes it's very literally, and sometimes it's, figuratively. And then for the kids to be able to think about how they have answered and responded to your book and those questions. So like you said, Kathryn, the writer writes the story almost as a question, and you're inviting readers to answer that question through how they interpret and process that story. I think that's so beautiful and so well said. So if we are thinking about that and maybe some of the actions and the responses that come from the work that you do, I know, Todd, on your website, you have quite a bit of resources for teachers that they can do, like little lunch notes and little takeaways and things. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and some of the posters that you have available and how maybe that's been useful in the classrooms with the teachers that you and the lives that you touch?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, when I talk to adults, I say a lot of people would love this job, the idea of writing children's books. What an exciting, what a cool job you have. And it really is, but a step further, I feel like I don't just get to write children's books, but I get to try and help make a difference in the world with the things that I write about. And I think a lot of it, because I struggled so much in school, I was held back in second grade because I could not read to the level I should have been, because I had dyslexia and it wasn't recognized. And, I struggled so much. And I think in everything that I do, I put in my books, is if I can help someone else just feel a little bit more confident about themselves, or work through something that was so troubling. So it really is a two-part thing. It's fun and you get to make a difference. And I think I need to offer, my school visits, whatever. It's an engagement time. It's to bring them into what I do. It's not sit there and be quiet and listen. But you just bring kids into this world that you're doing. They feel like they're a part of it. They had fun, and maybe whatever they take away from it, but they remember. And, doing activities for the younger kids. I have an activity book that, we go through and say, draw, what would you see in the ocean? And they love that part. And I think to give teachers resources, fun things to do. And it's another way of saying, hey, we're going to read Todd's book, but we're also going to learn how to write. And so this is how I make a book, or we're just going to have fun. And so I think it's the whole package. It's like, I don't think you just write a book and then you hide as much as a lot of us would like to. But I think, you're out there and I am my books. Everything about me is put from the heart and in my books, and it's the type person I am. And I think that it's important to be supportive in whatever way you can. So yeah, whatever fun things that I can come up with or to put out there for teachers, it just kind of goes hand in hand.
Thank you. Arree, would you like to speak to that? And I have so many things I want to add, but I'm trying to be quiet because no one wants to hear from me. They want to hear from you guys. So Arree. Arree, I think you're muted.
Oh, so yeah. I was just saying. Thanks. I was just saying that I also feel that it's such a privilege to make children's books for kids and adults. And as storytellers, we connect to the world in what's going around us, and oftentimes other people are feeling the same way. And so books can be that bridge that connects people and let people know that they're not alone, or help them with those problems. I know with Mixed, I made this book Mixed because I have so many friends who have mixed families now. And, you know, I had this idea when it started several years ago. I had this idea several years ago, and our world's really changed in that time. I had no idea that there would be Trump and a lot more escalated conflict. And I still feel that our world is moving towards a more diverse and accepting place. I think there is progress that goes forward and backwards. But I was just thinking how, you know, when you have these ideas as a storyteller, you try to boil them down to the basics and make an analogy that other people can relate to. And it becomes important and timely if you're just very genuine and true to that curiosity of what you're struggling with or those ideas. And then other people are able to engage your story in the same way. So yeah, and the last thing I love about being a storyteller is that you can also just tap into being a kid again, which I think if we all go back and just be 5 or 6 or 7 again, you know, it's a magical time. And actually we all can. And I think that's another magic of picture books is sometimes as adults we get caught up with just the everyday responsibilities of life, but you know, picture books can really remind you what's important. I mean, that's one of the things I really love about Todd's books is they're so simple and powerful, you know, about love and acceptance. And saying something like that simply is sometimes the best and most powerful way to do it.
I couldn't agree more. As you were talking, I was thinking about how, Todd, you mentioned, you know, when you write, this is how I might connect to others and connect my story, but you're also providing an opportunity. You guys are saying so many things that are powerful about life lessons, but in terms of using picture books just for every aspect, you know, we look at a book and we're thinking like a reader. And I'm thinking now as an educator, you know, oh, how might I use this to share a strategy, something that I'm doing in my reading life that I can demonstrate and model and ask kids to try. And then, you know, what invitation does that give me as a writer? Like, oh, I noticed that Todd wrote with this pattern and I might try to do that. And so it gives kids of all ages in any writing to look at as a model and as a mentor, to be able to say, how can I try to write like that and take a risk and have that model to be able to, you know, have a starting point and to be able to celebrate work that I can do like that author. So when we name and notice the things that you guys do, you're giving us another gift and another opportunity to say, you know, let's try to write like Arree, or let's try to notice something that Todd has done or Kathryn has done in her work. And then also, you know, what are those life lessons that are in those books? So we're really feeding, you know, one or 2 or 3 birds, right, with one hand by looking at those books with that lens of reading, writing, and life. And I absolutely love that. I know that Jessica, who's been kind enough to share in our Twitter chat, people are really moved by what you're all saying, and that when you put your stories out onto the pages in that way and you give us an opportunity to look at that, you're also giving kids the bravery and the courage to do that and to tell the stories that they need to tell. So I wanted to just say thank you about that as well. Kathryn, one of the things that you did very specifically, and we talked a lot earlier about colors, but you used lines and, you know, and the physical space in Draw the Line. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and then you can all, Todd and Arree, add to that in terms of some of the artwork that you've done as well. Kathryn, would you mind?
Sure. Well, Draw the Line, as I mentioned, came from talking about connections we have with each other. And when I was out doing school visits, I would actually bring a physical purple string and I threw it out into the audience and the kids would have fun connecting with that. But I said, right now I have a connection with you. And if I, you know, threw that line and weaved it with all of you, and then I brought it all together, we're kind of a fabric, which represents a community. And I talked a little bit about that, but Draw the Line actually originally came from me, my own boundaries and how it felt stretched, and I felt overextended and overwhelmed. And it ended up evolving into something very different. And as Arree was bringing up, just current events, there's two boys in this story, and what happens is they're both drawing their own lines. And I ask kids, do the boys look the same? And they say, no, they're different. One boy has a black shirt, another one has white shirt. One boy has black hair, the other one has white hair, but they're drawing different lines, a straight line and a curved line. And I said, I tell adults, that's kind of linear thinking versus circular thinking. And of course, what happens is sometimes we clash and we bump into each other, but moving forward into this book, the boys start questioning, can our lines actually connect? And what happens is when you really have a connection with somebody, it does feel like magic, and they're suddenly able to lift this line. With every relationship, of course, is a give and a take and a push and a pull, and the new friend ends up taking a whole lot of line. And what happens is this, one boy starts to fall with that line. And going back to what I was talking before about, what happens with our connection. It can fray or rip or tear. And I ask the kids, is that rip, is that tear getting smaller or bigger, smaller or bigger, smaller or bigger? And what happens is that the rip gets so big that it becomes a chasm. And pretty soon the boys are on opposite sides of the page. And the question becomes, of course, what happens when the rip gets so big that we feel like we can't come together? So anyways, I'm going to just quickly say it's really about one of the boys ends up finding a way to reach out. And the realization is we don't reach out at the farthest points of contention. We reach out where our edges can still come together. And it's sometimes not about the right or the wrong, but simply about who sees the bigger picture, who sees the solution to it. And going back to what we're all talking about with picture books help provide that in a very simple and symbolic way that kids can engage with. But yeah.
Thank you. Arree, would you like to add a little to that? You're on mute again.
Yep. Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, so yeah, the way that you use lines and patterns and colors is very intentional as a designer on how you can think about how to use it in the story. So if you can go to that one slide that has color lines and shape, yeah, that one. Here, I intentionally use, the only colors that are in the image are the characters, and this was the image where the colors started fighting, and so then they separated into different neighborhoods of Redville, Bluetown, and Yellow Heights. And the way that we used lines, obviously, was to show walls and gates and separation. So you're really showing the division through lines, actual physical barriers. The colors are used just as that metaphor for different types of people, obviously. And then, by the end of the story, there's lots of different colors because of mixing and diversity, of inclusion. And so, so I think that's one of the most fun parts of making a story as a children's book author illustrator, is that you can think of how you can use principles of art in your storytelling, and it makes it more powerful because you don't have to say it; you can just show it visually.
I actually have out behind me as well. I know you keep talking about mix.
Yeah.
Keep knocking down books. I'm in Heather's office right now, and I had to bring a suitcase of books for the sessions that I did earlier. And we'll talk off the sidebar, Chris, how I'm not going to double book again, but I just love also, you know, the unique aspect of how you play with the illustrations and the words across the pages to, you know, to illustrate the message and the story. And I think you all do that so well. So I know you keep talking about Mix, but I just wanted to give a shout out to some of your other books that are behind me. And Todd, you're up next. Would you like to add to that conversation about some of the work that you do in your art? I know we don't have a lot of time. People are dying. People are texting and tweeting and saying they're loving this. They wanted to hear so much more. So I hope people will be encouraged to go to your websites and to also reach out to tweet or contact them via email and invite them to come to classrooms as well. So go ahead, Todd.
So, you know, my style is been the way it is, I think, since I was in school, since I was drawing Snoopy in second grade and I won a contest. I think it's refined to me, but, you know, one of my very first book signings, I met a family and they said, "Oh, Todd, we didn't know you did your illustrations. We thought a 6-year-old did them." And they were serious. They really thought a 6-year-old was illustrating for me. And I thought, this is not good if people are thinking that a 6-year-old did these. And then I was like, kind of embrace that. And that's exactly what draws kids into my books, is they look at it and they go, and I encourage this. It's like, how many of you think you can draw better than me? Everyone, raise your hands. And they're immediately into that. And I'm really proud to be that guy that draws like a 6-year-old now. At first I was embarrassed, now I'm proud. But I think that's what helps me deliver the type messages that I deliver, is the simple art style. And it's very consistent every time. It's the black line first, and it's the colors and the words. And I got into publishing through my actual artwork. I did not think about writing children's books, but my artwork was telling a story, and someone suggested that, and she happened to be an editor, and I got my lucky break then after struggling 16 years as an artist. So anyway, I only know one thing. I'm not brilliant. I know what's in my heart, and I draw a certain way. I don't put noses on my people because it's just a black dot. That doesn't work. So we just don't do noses on people. The end. Love, Todd.
JoEllen,
Oops, can't hear you, JoEllen.
Again, I did it again. I was so engrossed in the conversation, listening to everyone, I forgot to unmute. I apologize. I was saying, sadly, that our time is pretty much up, and I don't want it to be, because we lost like 20 minutes with our technical difficulties. So we might just have to do another gathering session and explore these ideas further, because you guys have so much to offer in your books. And, you know, as I said in the beginning, the books that are on our shelves offer hope to kids, and in the joy that they bring, in the stories that they tell, in the pictures and the messages that you gift us all with. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Cannot really apologize enough about our technical difficulties for those of you who are watching at home. But I hope that you will reach out to Todd and to Arree and to Kathryn, and I'll tweet out their website and their handles so that you can also follow up with them on your own. Definitely keep reading, keep writing, folks. We love your work. Keep drawing, and thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
We can stay.
Okay, thank you so much. We're still live, and I just want to wrap up and let everybody know that, well, first of all, I'm in awe of the amazing talent of all the authors and JoEllen for pulling this together, because what an amazing space for learning and sharing and celebrating the power of literature. So if you miss any part of the session today, the video is being archived, and you can access it from the Ed Collab page after today. And don't leave, because we've had a wonderful day of learning so far, and we're not done yet. We have one more session 15 minutes away at 3 Eastern. We'll hear from Chris Lehman to discuss what Roz taught me in his closing remarks. So make sure that you join us for our closing session today. So thanks everyone for joining and celebrating and sharing on Twitter.